Welcome back, S'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. We've got another spooktastic episode. We are starting off this new year with a bang, man. We had Y2K, and now we've got a great haunting episode. If you're new here, my name is Will, and this is Sawhill Steven. I like to just call him Steve. Other people know him as Sawhill. I think something else when I hear Sawhill, But anyways,
A man
uh,
of many names. And that is who I am.
yes. So if you don't know us, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Beyond Campfire. Our TikTok is Beyond the Campfire. You can find us wherever you get a podcast. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Castbox, anywhere and everywhere you can get a podcast. We're there. So yeah, what have you got for us today, Steve?
All right, today we are talking about the Black Volga. Basically, it's a phantom car that kidnaps little children in the night. So we'll be talking about the lore, we'll be talking about where exactly this happens, we'll be talking about whether the Black Volga continues to operate today, and then we'll end the episode with a ChatGPT story and whether we think this thing is legit or not. So, yeah, if this is your first time on the podcast, please be sure to give us a follow if you like all things that go bump in the night, ghost stories, cryptids, conspiracy theories. Me and Will, we talk about it all. So, if you like listening to a cowboy and Indian tell you spooky stuff, we are the podcast for you. So, all right, but yeah, the Black Volga takes us to Eastern Europe. So,
Ooh,
most of our episodes kind of, I feel like, have centered around America. We've gone international a few times,
yeah.
but
I think we've only gone international. If we've gone international, we've stuck to at least this side of the hemisphere. We have had some stories in England. We've had some stories in like Indonesia because you remember we had the SS Orang Medan, but we haven't gone very much international. We've mostly just stuck to like England and Scotland or England and Ireland, and then America, and then some parts of the Caribbean. But we've never really gone deep into Europe besides Krampus.
yeah, no, for sure. So, yeah, I definitely don't think we've touched Eastern Europe really at all. But yeah, today we will be diving right into Eastern Europe. So that will be a cool thing to do. But yeah, without further ado, let us get into it. So, the Black Volga is a name given to a mysterious car that allegedly haunted the streets of Ukraine, Poland, and other Eastern European countries in the 1960s and 70s. Although some people have reported even seeing it today, but we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, according to the legend, a black car, usually a described as a GAZ-21 or a GAZ-24 Volga, which is a luxury car that was produced by the Soviet Union, was seen being driven by sinister figures. We'll get to that. We'll come back to that in just a second. Who kidnapped and killed people, especially children, for various nefarious purposes.
Mm.
So, just to kind of paint the scene a little bit, imagine you are a factory worker in the late 1960s in Poland. You're trying to feed your wife, you're trying to feed your kids,
Yeah.
whatever. And, it's late at night, 10:45 p.m. And, you see some kids playing, you know, you're like, okay, kind of weird. It's
Yeah.
10:05 p.m. at night, maybe they should be inside. All of a sudden, this black Volga pulls up out of nowhere. You see a shadowy hand come up, grab the kid, pull the kid into the car, and then it speeds off into the distance. And you're just like, what the heck just happened? Well, yeah, that was some of the reports that were coming out of Eastern Europe in
Mm.
1960s and late 1970s. So, what was that about? Was it the same car? Was it the same people? Where were they taking these kids? What were they doing with them? Um, yeah, we are going to get into all of that. Uh, but yeah, the Legend of the Black Volga, it's got a lot of variations, a lot of details. Actually, some people have reported it being a red Volga,
Mm.
to me would kind of ruin the name the Black Volga legend. But
Yeah.
yeah, some people have reported that it was a red car rather than a black car. But yeah, depending on the time and place, usually some of the common features that we see in these stories is that the car had some white features like white wheel rims, white curtains, white license plates. Some of the stories said that the car had horns instead of mirrors. So normally, where you'd expect there to be the mirror,
Mhm.
they would reportedly had some horns poking out. And some people said that the license plate read 666,
Mm.
which, if you ever read the Bible or you just kind of grew up in Christian or church circles, 666 is the number of Satan. It's the number of the devil in the book of Revelation in the Bible.
Mhm.
So yeah, a car having 666 on the license plate, probably not a good thing you want to be around at
No.
all. So, um, but yeah, Will, any additional thoughts before we get into some of the theories of what this car is, who could be driving it, what they're doing?
I'm gonna tell you what. If I saw that, just in the middle of the night, this random black car pull up, grab a couple kids, and speed off, I would be freaked out. At first, I'd be like P Diddy, but but then I'd be like, wait a minute, But like the whole license plate, the whole 666, the whole horn thing, that's a little freaky to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's yeah, I mean, if any of that's true, then that makes it more seem like a supernatural event rather than a kind of more something else, um,
Yeah.
you know, government agency.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, let us get into the theories, and we'll see how long these theories take. But yeah, after I get through the theories, we'll get into our Chat GPT story, and then after that, me and will talk about what we think the Black Volga actually is. So the first theory is probably the most boring one, uh,
Mm.
but this is the communist secret police theory.
Mm.
So, a lot of these Eastern European countries, they were originally part of the Soviet Union. Obviously, the Soviet Union fell apart in the 1990s and became the various countries we see today. But at the time that the Black Volga was really operating, a lot of these a lot of these countries were part of the Soviet Union. So one of the theories goes is that the communist secret police were kidnapping children to either perform military experiments on them or to just kind of directly bring them into the Soviet Union army. But that's kind of the first of the theories. It's just like, okay, no, nothing spooky or supernatural going on. This is just the government really just grabbing kids off the street and creating some kind of super soldiers or things like that out of it.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I mean that really is all there is to say about that. I don't know if you had a comment on that first theory, but that's pretty straightforward.
I could see that. The wife and I, we just finished watching a really cool docu series, or like not well, yeah, it's like a docu series on HBO Max called Chernobyl, where they talked about like the whole Chernobyl disaster and the way the Russian government acted in that show. If they're anything like they acted in that show, I wouldn't put it past them to be kidnapping children for military experiments or to be brainwashing them into soldiers.
Right.
Because they basically, because like with the whole Chernobyl disaster, they actually knew that there was this problem with the failsafe. Like there's a button that they could hit that would stop the reactor. They knew that there was such a problem with it that it could cause a meltdown, yet they just blanked it out and didn't let anybody know about it. So then that led to Chernobyl happening because they had no clue about that.
Yeah.
And then when what's his name tried to come out and speak the truth about it, they didn't listen to him, and they're like, "You're just crazy. You're a communist." And then they basically, or not, you're not a communist. You're like a capitalist or whatever. And then when they were like, "All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to let you go live your life, okay? But you're losing your job." Okay, you'll still keep the title, still get the money, but you're losing it. You can't work there. You can't have any friends. You can't do any of this, none of this. And the guy actually eventually hanged himself 2 years after the Chernobyl accident. And finally, the communist government was like, we should pay attention now. But yeah, from watching that and kind of learning from that, I wouldn't put it past them to kind of be kidnapping kids.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the theories of well, actually, I'll get into some of that with probably some of the other theories. But yeah, there does seem to be some basis evidence for this theory. The KGB, a lot of them really did actually use Black Volgas in their operations and other secret service things. Um, Now, usually they were using it for surveillance. Abduction was not really something that the KGB actually did. Um,
Yeah.
at least, at least if they were doing it, I mean, obviously they weren't being very public about it. Uh, but yeah, we do see kind of some. Well, actually, this kind of leads right into our next theory. So the second theory is the Russian mafia theory. So the theory goes that the mafia of Russia in the Soviet Union was kidnapping people and children to harvest their organs or harvest their blood and sell it on the black market. And there actually are legit real cases of organ trafficking and blood smuggling in Eastern Europe during the Cold War era. Like that is something that happened to a degree. Now, is this related to the Russian mafia? Is this related to Black Volga? That's where we don't really have enough evidence to link those two things together per se.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, organ trafficking and blood smuggling was happening. You have to get organs and blood from somewhere. If there's this mysterious Black Volga going around and kidnapping children,
Maybe.
it might not be too much of a stretch to say, well, hey, maybe these organs and this blood is coming from the children that were being taken in the Black Volga.
Yeah.
So that is the second theory. It was reported that the Black Volga uh, would pull up. Sometimes, depending on the version of the story, sometimes the car would just pull up and just grab the children. Other times, the car would pull up and it would offer the children like candy or some kind of toys, and so the children would actually, like walk up to the car, and then that's they would either hop in the car voluntarily, or once they got close to the car to grab the candy or whatever, that's when they were grabbed.
Yeah. You know what makes me wonder? Like me and you growing up, like we always made jokes of like, the van with the free candy on the side of the van. And, now it's kind of upgraded to where it's like free Wi-Fi. Like we've made jokes as kids about white vans pulling up and kidnapping kids. I wonder if that could have stemmed from this whole Black Volga thing. Where you're talking about there's these versions of the legends where it's like a car pulls up, offers you candy, pulls you inside the vehicle, and you disappear. I wonder if we just kind of maybe evolved that into an American way and made our own kind of version of the Black Volga with the white van.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being the case. So, all right, I got a few more theories, and then we can probably get into the Chat GPT story. And then after the Chat GPT story, you and me will talk about which one we think is most likely. Um, okay, but so here are this third one I'm gonna say is the last like popular theory. So like there's the three, and after the big three, there's like smaller theories. So this is the last big theory. So the last big theory is that these kidnappers were Satanists. That you had Satan worshiping people that were kidnapping these children to sacrifice them to the devil himself, to Satan. And I mean, maybe I know there was like the scare in the '80s of
Yeah, I
you
was
know,
fixing to mention that.
like, and granted, although that which we're actually planning to talk about that scare on this podcast
Yep.
at some so just to give like a little preview of that, most of that was exaggerated. It's just parents being overblown. But I mean, there were some legit Satanist stuff happening, at least.
Mhm.
And so, could this Black Volga that was kidnapping children could 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 it be Satanist? I
Could have
mean,
been.
yeah, sure. Not many people are kidnapping children, but yeah, if there was a group out there that would be doing that, yeah, I mean, Satanists seem like a group
Yeah.
interested in doing that. So,
Yeah. No, I when you said Satanist, I was like, oh, satanic panic. Because that's where my mind jumped first was the whole satanic panic of the 80s where it was like D&D was devil worshiping and rock and roll was the devil's music and just the way everybody was. But I think now it'd be really funny is we had a Satanist listen to the podcast and they're like, we don't do that. We don't sacrifice children. What are you talking about?
I know, right?
But no,
The one, the one Satanist that watches this podcast is like throwing his phone across the room now.
we've pissed off a lot of people.
Like, they're saying that about me.
I can't believe they're saying I sacrifice babies. I have no affiliation to the abortion clinics.
I don't know. Our satanic church member viewership is
Decreasing rapidly.
episode.
Is like I'm gonna look at the analytics for this episode, and it's like it's steady, and then right at this part drops off because that one Satanist person just clicked out. He said, "I'm done. I'm not listening to this crap."
I know,
No,
right?
but I could definitely see how people could believe that. I almost feel like you could almost, and like obviously we'll give our opinion later on, but I almost feel like you could almost tie that a little bit into the second theory. You know what I mean? And I'll kind of explain that a little bit towards the end of the episode after you go through your other theories when I talk about what I think. But yeah.
All right, yeah. So that's it for the big three theories. And I mean, sadly, children did go missing in the 1960s and 70s in these Eastern European countries, and we don't know what happened to them. We don't know.
So before you get into the other theories, was there actual documented missing children's reports?
Yes.
Or is this okay? So so like the Black Volga was like children were actually going missing, and this is how people were trying to explain what's through the Black Volga.
Yeah, children were actually going missing.
Okay.
Several people reported either seeing a Black Volga before the children went missing, or some people would go as far as saying they actually saw a hand reach out of the Black Volga and actually grab the children themselves. Reports differ depending on who you're talking to and who you ask, but
okay,
yeah, this is kind of where these theories come from with the Black Volga of like, well, hey, what's happening to these kids? Who's taking them? So.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna rapid fire through these last smaller theories, and then yeah, we'll get into our Chat GPT story of the day. Okay, so I'm not an anti-Semite or anything, but one of the theories was the Jews that the Jews were doing it. So the Jews were kidnapping kids and doing their blood libel stuff. And so, at the risk of getting the podcast banned, won't elaborate too much further on that, but if you really want to know more about that, go watch Candace Owens or something like that. She had a lot to say about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
that was one of the theories, is that the Jews were driving the Black Volgas, and they were the ones kidnapping the kids and doing their activities with that.
Yeah.
Another theory was the vampires. So vampires were driving Black Volgas for some reason. I guess the windows are tinted, so the sunlight was maybe not penetrating. Well, actually, no. All of these happened late at night. I do want to make that point. Yeah, because all of these stories, the Black Volgas are operating at nighttime. So you don't have any daytime reports of this happening. But I mean, yeah, I guess if vampires were wanting to be modern with how they were getting victims, I guess driving a Soviet Union luxury car would be. So.
I always knew it. I always knew the Count from Sesame Street was a communist. I always knew it. One, two, two children.
Well, you can probably guess this next theory because we talk about this particular thing a lot. But the next,
Aliens.
you guessed it, it's aliens. So aliens were driving the Black Volgas. They would beam the children into their black Soviet Union things with their beams of light, and yeah, then they would take them to the operating room to do their alien experiments on them. So,
All I can picture is some like aliens beaming down to Earth, walking into like Carvana. No, not Carvana. What is it? What's the green rental car company?
Car Enterprise, I think.
Enterprise. They walk into Enterprise. Hey, we need to rent a car. And they're just like, but you're aliens. You got a spaceship. They're like, we need to rent a Black Volga, please. All right, you got your license. And somehow they have a license. Don't know how. Apparently they beamed themselves to the United States and took a DMV test. And they're like, we need a Black Volga. I'm like, okay, here you go. Like they somehow have money and a credit card. Don't know how. They do. They're aliens. And they're like taking their little Black Volga over there, and they're like, this is way easier than flying our spaceship. Nobody will notice us now. That's what it is. They're in disguise.
They're in disguise, yeah. The image of aliens driving a Black Volga is just super hilarious to me. But
I could just imagine like the little green heads poking out the window. You're like a little like the little ET finger poking out the window to point at the children. ET want that one.
yeah, right. Okay, the last smaller theory was the Catholic Church.
Oh, we
Um,
got the Jews, we've got the Catholics.
there
Who
you
are
go.
gonna piss off next?
If you know anything about Eastern Europe, there are some Catholics there, but most Eastern Europeans tend to be part of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Mm.
And so I know some Eastern Orthodox conspiracy groups tend to say that like Roman Catholics prey on Eastern Orthodox children, so they'll like kidnap them and force them to be Catholic or something like that. So um, that's kind of the nicer version of the story. Some Eastern Orthodox will say that the Roman Catholic Church is doing more awful and insidious things to these children,
Yeah.
but yeah, the nicer one was like, oh, they would kidnap them and make them become like Roman Catholic altar boys or something like that. So that smaller theory kind of more so plays into the religious differences between Eastern Europe and Western Europe.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, I mean, looking at some of the stories I found, yeah, there was priests hopping in the Black Volga and grabbing these kids. There was nuns hopping in the Black Volga and grabbing.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, no Roman Catholic position was off limits in these stories. It's just like no, they were all jumping in and getting on this child kidnapping.
Yep. And you know what? You know what happened when they questioned the nuns? They said it's none your business. The dad jokes are starting, people.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, that's all I have as far as information wise goes. Um, but yeah, I guess let's read our ChatGPT story, and then we will end with what we think.
Yeah, we're gonna mix it up a little bit, guys, because usually Steven would do all the research for this episode and have the ChatGPT story. Forgot to do it. It's okay. He's a busy man. All right, he's getting the ladies. So, or should I say the Bell Witches? So, anyways, it's up to me to carry us out to the end. All right. Beyond the Campfire, the Black Volga encounter. The rain fell in a steady drizzle as Will and Stephen drove along the potholed roads of Poland, their beat-up van rattling with every bump. It was late, and the headlights struggled to pierce the heavy mist clinging to the countryside. Stephen glanced at the GPS on his phone, its faint glow casting eerie shadows across the cabin. We're close, he said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. The last sighting of the Black Volga was reported near this stretch of road. Will, his cowboy hat tipped low, yawned. Remind me why we're chasing down some old car instead of, I don't know, something that ain't made of steel? Stephen adjusted his glasses. Because, Will, the Black Volga isn't just a car. It's a legend. A cursed vehicle that appears at night, kidnaps people, and leaves no trace. Witnesses claim it's driven by dark forces, maybe even the devil himself. Will chuckled, tapping the wheel with his gloved hand. Sounds like a load of hooey. Betcha it's just some spooked locals with too much imagination. Or, Stephen countered, it's real, and we're about to be the first podcast to capture solid evidence of it. He held up his recorder, ready to document any sign of the infamous black sedan. The road ahead stretched into darkness, the rain creating a rhythmic pattern against the windshield. Just as Will was about to make another sarcastic remark, the van's engine sputtered. Oh, come on, Will groaned, pulling over to the side of the road. You got to be kidding me. Stephen frowned. What's wrong? Engine's acting up, Will said. Twisting the key, the van coughed and died, leaving them in silence, save for the rain. Stephen looked out in the misty night. This feels ominous. Will leaned back, tipping his hat up. Don't start with the dramatics, preacher. Probably just water in the engine. But before either of them could move, a faint sound broke through the quiet. The low, guttural rumble of an engine. Stephen stiffened. Do you hear that? Will squinted out the foggy windshield. The sound grew louder, accompanied by the faint glow of headlights cutting through the mist. Someone's coming, Will said, reaching for the flashlight tucked into his belt. As the vehicle came closer, its shape became clearer. A sleek, black sedan with chrome detailing that gleamed even in the rain. The car moved unnaturally smooth, gliding over the uneven road without so much as a jostle. Stephen's breath caught. Will, that's it. That's the Black Volga. The sedan slowed as it approached their van, its headlights dimming to an eerie glow. The windows were tinted so dark that they reflected nothing but the mist and rain. Will's hand tightened on the flashlight. Well, they sure picked a creepy way to say hello. The Black Volga stopped directly in front of their van, its engine idling with a deep, menacing growl. Neither Will nor Stephen moved. Tension thickened the air. Then, with an audible click, the driver's side door began to open. A figure stepped out, dressed in a black trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured their face. They moved slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. Stephen's voice was barely a whisper. Will, this isn't normal. Will gritted his teeth. No kidding. The figure stopped a few feet away, its silhouette illuminated by the sedan's dim headlights. When it spoke, its voice was low and cold, with an accent neither of them could place. You're on the wrong road. Stephen swallowed hard. We didn't mean any harm. We're just researching local legends. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though amused. Legends have power. Some of them best left alone. Will stepped forward, flashlight raised. Look, pal, we didn't come all this way to be spooked by some fellow with a fancy car. Who are you, anyways? The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a gloved hand and pointed at Stephen. You asked for the truth. Are you prepared to pay its price? Stephen blinked, his pulse quickening. What do you mean? Without warning, the Black Volga's engine roared to life, its headlights flaring brightly. The figure stepped back into the car, the door slamming shut. Get back! Stephen shouted, grabbing Will's arm. The sedan lurched forward, its tires screeching against the wet rain as it hurtled towards them. Move! Will yelled, shoving Stephen out of the way. The two dove into the ditch just as the Black Volga sped past, its engine howling like a banshee. It disappeared in the mist, leaving nothing behind but the smell of burning rubber and a deep, chilling silence. Will sat up, mud clinging to his jacket. What in tarnation was that? Stephen, still catching his breath, stared down the road where the car had vanished. The Black Volga. It's real. Will shook his head, pulling Stephen to his feet. Real or not, it's gone now. Let's get this van rolling and hightail it out of here. As they returned to the van, the engine miraculously started without a hitch. Stephen glanced over his shoulder, the unease still gnawing at him. Will, he said softly, I think it let us go. Will adjusted his hat, his jaw tight, or was just waiting for the next poor fool. The two drove off in the rainy night, the recording equipment capturing the faint sound of an engine rumbling far in the distance. A reminder that some legends don't just haunt, they hunt.
That was really interesting.
I like that. I think that was one of my favorite stories we got.
It seemed like it was going with the Russian mafia theme or KG.
I couldn't really pick up. When
Okay.
it said doing an accent, I tried doing an accent, but I feel like I did 3 different accents there. At
Yeah.
one point, I sounded Irish. At one point, I sounded Russian. At one point, I sounded like a mix.
It
But
definitely wasn't going the supernatural route.
could see it kind of going the supernatural route with
It
like
kind of
a
like,
little bit,
yeah,
a little bit. Because obviously, like these stories are supposed to take place in our time, so the KGB isn't a thing anymore.
right.
Poland isn't under or under the USSR anymore, so that's what kind of like to me it kind of leans a little bit more towards like a supernatural side of like that could have been the devil himself, and we were just he obviously our souls were already claimed by Jesus, so he's like I ain't gonna claim those souls, but I'm gonna scare them.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
theories.
Um, I think my family is going to be here soon, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. But let's very quickly do our theories, which one we believe, and I think that will be the episode for today.
Yeah. All right, Steve, I'll let you go first.
Okay, so I I do believe the Black Volga was real. I do think that there was some kind of force that was using these cars to kidnap people and do awful things. I tend to believe the government theory. We know the KGB was driving these kinds of cars.
Yeah.
Now, I know they were doing surveillance mostly, but I really don't think it's that big of a stretch for them to go from surveillance to straight up abduction.
Yeah.
And one thing we have to realize about the Soviet Union, it's not like the Soviet Union was all like one big, same ethnic nationalist group. The Soviet Union was kind of a country of countries,
Hmm.
and the national like party, they didn't really particularly like a lot of the Eastern European people, and so I could definitely see them undervaluing some of the Eastern European kids, and they're like, well, yeah, we don't want to take our kids, we don't want to take Russian kids, so we're like, yeah, let's go over and grab some Ukrainian kids or some Polish kids because we don't care about them as much, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, we could use those for our experiments. So that's my theory. I think it was the KGB, and I think they were taking these kids to use them for some kind of military experiments. That's what my thought. But I do think the Black Volga
Yeah.
goes, and that's what I think. What about you?
I have a couple little different theories. I think my biggest belief, I think I'm on board with you with like it being the government. Just because, like I said, when I watch like kind of what I'm basing some of my stuff off with is like when I watched the Chernobyl series with my wife, there's like in Chernobyl, there's like a lot of this was dramatized, but most of it was real. And one of the things they had was on the roof, now they got this big old dome kind of built over Chernobyl. Well, before they could do that, there was debris like graphite from the reactor that was on top of the roof that had to be pushed into where the core exploded. So you had that kind of the crater where the core was. They had to push the debris off the roof into the where the core used to be in order for them to seal it up. So they tried moon rovers, but there was one, and it was called Misha. They named the different rocks. So Misha was so radioactive that if you went up there and you stood near it for more than 2 minutes, you would get severely sick. And in 3 minutes, you would be dead within 3 to 4 months or like within 3 weeks afterwards. So when they were trying to figure out how to do it, computers, like, the rovers they were using, they couldn't get up there because it would fry the circuits so quickly. Like they brought in this like cop from, West Germany, like a cop, like a robot, kind of like a bomb, like a bomb unit to push it. And as soon as it got up there, within a second, it shut off. So part of the reason why I kind of go with your theory is because the way they ended up getting the debris off was they called in the people of like Ukraine and probably Poland to get up there and kind of go in these 90-second shifts to go out there and scoop the stuff off and to push it into the reactor. And they, kind of didn't really care much. So that's why I kind of agree with your theory. That's the first theory I definitely think could be true is the whole it being, the KGB. The second theory that I really think, and this is kind of my own interpretation, what my thought is I agree with like the KGB driving Volga with surveillance. What I think could have been happening in these times at these times was there could have been a child kidnapper who was going around actually kidnapping children and had no relation with the KGB, no relation with the mafia, no relation with Satanists, but because the KGB were in the area, probably doing surveillance at the time, this whole Black Volga kind of came up. And really, there's some guy who's kidnapping children, probably murdering them or whatever. But because of the KGB being in the area, they probably started bringing this whole Black Volga legend. I really do like the idea, like with our story of it kind of being something supernatural, because I think I like the movie Christine. the Stephen King book. I think it was Stephen King who wrote Christine with the devil car. I kind of like that theory too, of like it being some sort of ghost car, that's picking up people and driving away and disappearing. So those are my thoughts. The biggest theory I'd go with is it's something with the government. Although my second theory I really lean towards is the possibility that there might have been a coincidence of being a Black Volga doing some surveillance and there being a separate guy who is doing child kidnappings. So that's kind of most of my thoughts.
I like it, man. Well, yep, there you guys have it. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the Black Volga? Feel free to hop on our reels this week and let us know what your thoughts are. And
yeah,
that's all I have, brother.
Next week we've got Steven talking more about aliens, and then we'll see where we go after that. Thank y'all for enjoying, and thank y'all for listening. And we promise it's going to be a great year. We look forward to it, and we appreciate every one of y'all for y'all support. Our Patreon is up. We got our merch store, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond Campfire, and then you can also find us on TikTok at Beyond Campfire. And once again, thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a great weekend, and we hope y'all have a great new year. Thank y'all.